sand casting, it seems like in videos, furnaces get a lot of credit, molds get a lot of credit, pouring stuff gets a lot of credit, but no one ever talks about the flask. I've never seen a video of making a flask. I've never looked for one either, so that's probably on me. But these are two designs of flasks, and these are the things that the sand goes in. I have two designs. One on the right is very simple. It's kind of small, 7 inches that way, 5.5 inch that way, internal size, and they're made out of 1x4s that you can get at the store. This kind of design, these two side things are attached to the bottom one. The bottom flask, by the way, is called a drag. The top flask is called a cope. So remember that. If there's a flask in the middle, if there's a 3-part thing, those are called cheeks, the ones in the middle. Probably not going to use those terms anymore. The flask on the left here, the more complicated, bigger one, is loosely based on a design in the Dave Gingery book, and it features this rim around the inside that's attached to the inside of the flasks that I have poorly modeled here. Good work, me. And those hold the sand in, and those are important if the flask is kind of big. These ones aren't very big. First, we're going to build these parts, these kind of indexing pieces. There's 2 on each flask, 2 flasks, so it means I need to make 4 of them. Math is fun! No, it's not, but I need 4 of them, and the reason I'm doing this inside is because I can, and my garage is freezing right now. It's to the point where I put salt on the ice, and it's still ice. So, yeah, pretty cold. Using this design, I made a pattern, a simple paper pattern. It's 2 inches across at the top, 4 inches tall, and 1 1/4 inches wide at the base. And that gives it this nice V kind of shape. And that'll line up with the insides of the side pieces here to kind of make sure that when you put the cope and the drag together, they will always end up directly on top of each other in the same place every time. And that's very, very important, because you don't want the core to shift over, you don't want the sand to shift, and you'll end up with, like, your piece to look like this, and that's kind of dumb. Not very useful. You want it to stay together. And you can make these in all sizes. Like, here's one that I'm going to have to make when I go through the Gingery book and make the lathe. It's going to be quite large, but we're not going to worry about that right now. So, I took my pattern, I then made a pattern for the side pieces, cut out of the same piece of paper, and then realized, oh, it's completely useless. So, throw that away. Okay, zoomed in. Here's a piece of wood. It's 1/4 inch thick by 4 inches by some length. Doesn't really matter. It's actually 3.5 inches wide, and that's for some reason that I don't understand, so I won't mention it. I'm going to make the whole shebang, those 3 pieces, out of one width section. And what you need for this is a combination square, such as this here. So, simple, 4 inches. Mark it there. Because this is a cool, fancy pants, 3-dimensional looking square, line it up, draw your line. Now we're going to find the center. You can get center finding rulers that are very, very nice. I don't have one because very, very broke. You can kind of line up the things and find out where the middle is. So if the middle is right here, then there's the same number of inches this way. Looks like 1 3/4, 1 3/4. I really hope that math adds up. Not going to double check because, you know, math ain't fun. Do it on both sides. Connect the dots. There's the center. Again, I'm being kind of slapdash here, but chances are pretty good these flasks are going to end up covered in molten aluminum, so they're going to be on fire, and no one's going to notice if everything's 1/32 of an inch off. I was never this slapdash when I was making furniture, and I was really, really never this slapdash when I was making bows, because you screw up with a bow, and chances are good you're going to end up with some splinter in your face. And by splinter, I mean a board that's all shrapnel-y looking. And that's never fun to get in your face. So I marked out the width of the bottom, width on the top. Draw a line. Same deal here. Draw a line. And if it's not perfect, it doesn't really matter, because I'm going to cut a line, and the 2 pieces will probably fit together just fine because they were cut at the same time. And for a reason I can't fully understand, I'm going to shorten the bottom pieces here. Now mark the waist clearly, very clearly. That way you don't screw that up repeatedly like I have. There, so this is marked. Got side piece, middle piece, side piece. And look at that! I marked a couple more earlier. Okay, so what am I doing with this? I'm going to have to clamp this and this to the workbench, sort of like that. This acts as a fence so I can keep the saw square. This is pretty thin. You don't really have to worry about going out of square, and it's really not going to matter even if it is crooked. But I have to do all the sawing left-handed for now, and I am not left-handed, so this is going to be monumentally terrible. So this little cheater trick, which I often use for chisels, is going to make a fill-in for sawing. I've never tested it like this before, so this is going to be fun. We'll see how it works. I'm just putting this in here as a spacer, so when I clamp this down, it's fairly flat. I don't get like any twisting action. This is my Home Depot cheap saw, and it's a Japanese pull saw, which is cool because it's flexible. Isn't that fun? Anyway, I got it because it has a cross-cut thing here, rip cut here, and it's 2 saws for the price of 1, which really, really appealed to broke me when I was in graduate school wanting to get into furniture building. Okay, I'm going to hold it sort of with my fingers, and now I will slowly and gently pull the pull saw and kind of cut this out. We'll see how it works. You ready? I'm nervous. This saw is long enough and wide enough that it'll kind of index itself. It'll set itself up against the fence and saw nice and straight. Sawing with the left hand isn't so hard. Feels kind of good. Also, for the record, don't use a piece of wood here that you want to keep looking pretty, because this will cut the crap out of that edge. Perfect! Focus, and check it out. A perfectly reasonably clean cut. Now swap this for this, and again line it up along the line that I drew. Now I'm going to do this one in 2 parts. I'm going to cut this line here, roughly straight, and then cut along there. So this is the rip cut, which is good for going like that way. So like long ways. If you're doing this, if you're cutting in here going this way, that's a rip cut. This is cross cut. We're going across the grain. I'm going to try to use the rip cut blades, but honestly this crappy saw was never really good at rip cutting anyway. But let's see if it works. Oh, it does. Maybe it just needed a hard oak. So the great part about doing this is that this cut is going to be fairly straight, and it's going to be about the thickness of this metal blade. So even if I cut this at kind of an S, or at a weird angle this way, or at a different angle this way, the 2 pieces will always line up. I won't have to do any finishing later. Boom! Piece cut! Alright, these little fuzzies sticking out, those will just peel right off, or you can sand them off or just hit it with a block plane or whatever. Doesn't really matter. Other side. So, story time. I said when I did furniture, I'm never that slapdash. Well, I should have said, never that slapdash anymore. Because I made my wife a slant front desk, which is a very nice classic style of desk. Made the mistake of not double checking the design. So, when I built it, it was all pretty. Finished it, was assembling. Put the door on, it's like a slant, the door like goes like this and then it folds down to be a surface. You can Google it. The door left an 1.5 inch gap on the top. So it didn't look very pretty. But luckily for me, she always leaves the door open. And the surface is so covered in crap you can't close it. So I never have to look at that gap, which is, you know, nice, I guess. Bingo! Unclamped. And remove finished product. Dang splintery pieces. I'll probably clean those up before I stick the whole thing together. Don't want to get splintery. I want to be trying to melt in metal. That didn't make any sense grammatically. Good work, me. I didn't have to finish at all. I haven't hit these with anything between cutting them out and now. When they're stuck together, look, the grain almost lines up like it was meant to be that way. Because I cut them out of the same piece. Now I just got to do this whole thing 4 more times, not on camera. But there, seriously, just look at that fit. And I did that with a Home Depot saw. That was missing teeth. Okay, so next step, bundle up a bit more because it's 0 degrees outside and this unheated garage is freezing. 0 Fahrenheit, the real degrees. Now, we got to get the wood. I have this piece of 1x4 pine. It is surface 4 sides. So you might see S4S at the store. 1x4 8-foot select pine. That's what it says. Don't know if it's focusing. You can find these at Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, wherever. Probably Ace Hardware if you got one of those that's any good. And that's what this is. There's no knots in it. It's 8 feet, and I'll be able to make the small flask out of this one piece of wood. The small flask uses 7-inch pieces, and I want to show you a very important thing that you're going to need to have anytime you make a woodworking project. See this? That is called a cut list, if it focuses. It is a picture of a notepad from my computer. It tells me small flask on top, what I gotta cut, medium flask on the bottom, what I gotta cut. Now the small flask is simpler because it doesn't have to have fancy ribs inside to hold the sand in. It doesn't have bracing things on the sides. It's going to be tiny. It doesn't really need a lot of strength because of its smallness. So I'm just going to cut 8 7-inch long pieces. It'll be very quick. What I'm going to do is remove the thing from there. Now I got a nice hard metal ruler. So we need to make a 7-inch board. Start measuring not from the edge, but from the 1. And that's because this edge may not be ground perfectly. Then I move over 7 inches to the number 8 because math is evil, and do the same thing. Put a pencil mark just to the left of the line. Yeah, there we go. That's nice. There. Put a line nice and flush, and there we have it. An exactly 6-inch long board. Crap. Always remember, I really have no idea what I'm doing. And remember never to force the saw. Just kind of move the saw, let the saw blade do the work. I'm also keeping my right eye lined straight over the saw so I can keep it square. Nice clean edge. Relatively clean. Check it with a square, and crap, not perfect. Well, I'm out of practice and I was using my pane hand. Maybe I should have used the fence. I don't know. It's not perfect, but it's not really any worse than this. So I'll call that a success. Another thing to remember is it's square this way. And I think you'll agree that is spot on square that way. I was only really bad in one dimension. So I'm going to make 7 more of these. Now you might be saying, hey idiot, if it's so cold out there, where are your gloves? Well, I had an uncle who wore gloves once when he was woodworking, and he was using a router table. A little splinter grabbed one of the gloves, pulled his glove into the router. The router grabbed the glove, pulled his hand through, of course his hand was inside the glove, and routered his finger off. Yep, routered his finger clean off. So he called for his wife, hey, can you give me a glass of ice water? Threw his finger in the ice water, and it was off to the hospital. Now he was a nurse at that hospital. So he knew the staff, and he had been there kind of a long time. He's kind of a smart alecky character, but you know, he's good. He was good at his job, so he could get away with it. Anyway, the surgeon, ER surgeon on call, this was like 2 a.m., why he was routering at 2 a.m. The guy was new. The surgeon was new, and he was a plastic surgeon, so he kind of wanted to show off. So he reattached the finger. He didn't just fold the skin over. Reattached it, and reattached all the nerves, reattached the blood vessels, so he's got a whole fingernail, full sensation and circulation, but he doesn't have this knuckle because he didn't saw through it, he routered through it. So he had a big weird shaped, like the knuckle was gone. So this whole joint is locked straight. It's his right length, but it's straight, which means he can really, 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 really easily give a very stiff middle finger to people, but he can't do this. You know, small price to pay. That's why I don't wear gloves when woodworking. Anyway, random gross fact. Since my uncle knew the surgeon, he convinced him to let my uncle stay awake, and he wanted to watch, so he got to watch his own finger reattachment. Said it was fascinating watching the guy work on all the tiny little nerves and stuff. I just hope my uncle had the sense not to constantly ask the guy sarcastic questions just to screw with him while reattaching his own finger. Alright, now I got them cut, and I'm going to arrange them when I glue them somewhat like this. So that'll be the flask size. Now these are 7-inch boards, but they're not actually 1x4s. They're 3/4 by 3.5. And that's for reasons that I can't fully understand. Because they say it's because of milling things, because when they saw the boards they're rough, and then they shave it down a little bit to make these smooth edges. but they only have to take off a 1/4 inch this way, but they have to take off 1/2 inch this way. And if you get a 1x12, it's only 11 1/4 inches, so they had to take off 3/4. And if it was really for a process like planing it smooth, it should be even every single way. I think it's the man is trying to take away your extra wood. Now I'm going to glue these, I said, but I'm also going to use screws, wood screws, to hold them together. If you use wood screws alone, you can take them apart. That's kind of cool. But the problem is wood screws, they don't hold firm for very long. They start developing some slack, and if the wood expands or contracts, you'll get some of this action called racking. The screws can prevent some racking, but not like the glue can. The glue, however, doesn't like gluing into end grain. So we're going to glue end grain to side grain. It likes side grain to side grain, like this. Dovetails make that better, but I don't have dovetails. I'm not going to dovetail this. Are you crazy? I'm going to set them on fire pretty soon. Unintentionally, I promise. Here we are. I got the pieces cut. We're going to do some gluing, but I'm going to show you a trick. But I decided I'm just going to glue all of it. And in no way does that have to do with the fact that I checked and I don't have the right kind of screws in my garage right now. So I quickly improvised. I have here Titebond 2. I love Titebond glue. It's really, really good stuff. And here is one of the flasks. You might notice it's taped. It is taped together with the exception of this joint. Open it up. It's kind of taped to the end grain here, and it gives you this cool pattern. Glue, 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 I think. And then fold it back up, put a piece of tape across here. And it holds all the joints. Check that out. Isn't that a cool idea? Totally stole that from another guy I saw. Not on YouTube, though. He had his own, official website. This is just to prevent my beautiful IKEA desk from getting glue on it. And this glue is ultra strong, and it would wreck the crap out of this soft pine desk. Alright, we're going to run some glue. Just a wee bit. Uh-oh, my glue tip is clogged. My glue tip is clogged, people. Smear that on. It'll give a nice thin layer on the end grain. End grain soaks up glue, so that's not going to be enough. So let's also glue the crap out of this surface. Oh no, clogged. Clogged. It's clogged, I tell you. How many times can I say the word clogged? Welcome to watching me panic. Today on YouTube. That is really just not working. There. There. I gotta get my Bob Ross voice. There. Just there. Wasn't that easy? No, it wasn't easy, Bob. You made it look easier than it was. You must have been a wizard or something, because I cannot duplicate those results. Yeah, these weren't mistakes. These glue problems. There's happy accidents. Happy glue accidents that are permanent. Take the tape again. This is just masking tape. And tape over the last joint. Ta-da! Awesome. Correct some of the fitment issues, and that'll glue up nicely. And even where there's some gaps, it doesn't matter, because this glue is so awesome that it will weld these all together nice and firmly. Alright, let's set this aside and do the next one. Now, in a final step to make sure these fit on each other, I'm going to pick one of them up, set it on the other one. This is just to make sure that one isn't more diagonally than the other. They look pretty good. They only have to be pretty good here. Even if they're slightly out of kilter, if they're both out of kilter the same amount, it'll be perfect. Okay, many days later, and I have the glued up flasks. First off, check the fact that they're pretty much stable. These ones are pretty good. If you glue it up on a flat table like I did, with decent clamps like I didn't, you'll probably be okay. I ended up okay with this one, so we're pretty good. Now for the end pieces, I'll move this model French car, or Brazilian, depending on how much of a Jeep fanatic you are. I got these pieces cut. I drew a line right in the middle, and I put a line here in the center. Here I have a line drawn 2 inches up. This is 4 inches, so that's in the middle with centering lines so I can kind of eyeball where they go. But we'll glue that on there with a clamp, and then once that's glued on, we'll get these bottom pieces glued on right next to it. Nope, that doesn't go there. That goes over here. Yeah, there we go. Got my glue. I pre-cleaned the tip this time. Take this, I'm going to add a tiny bit of glue. I'm going to smear it around. just kind of in the center there. And see, I'm staying away from the line, and especially the thick globby stuff, putting up closer to the top. So I'm going to line it up here with the line, this little X I made, and this line there. Squeeze, double check underneath. Looks pretty good. It doesn't have to be perfect. None of this has to be perfect. If you really want to spend time making it perfect, then you can be extra sad when they burst into flames for the first time. Okay, I'll grab one of my mound of clamps. Make sure it's still lined up. There. Oh no. You have a little bit of working time with these. Just a little bit before the stuff starts to harden. A few minutes. But the less time you take, the better. See, I got a little bit of glue coming out. I do not want that. So just wipe that. There. That's, here. You have that. Thanks. Double check. Yes. Uh-oh. I see a problem. The side glue is squeezing out and going to touch here. We don't want that. So get paper towels. Paper towels. Why am I never prepared with paper towels? Toilet paper. That's sort of close. It's got paper in the name. So, note to self, use less glue next time. Idiot. Anyways, we get those lined up. Halfway decent. Eyeball that in. Some people use a brush, a little brush, to make sure they get their glue distribution just so. I'm not going to do that. I don't have a little brush. I have a little finger. There. Just there. Line it up just so. I dug deep into my pile of clamps and found these, which are not spring clamps and thus don't hurt my hands quite as badly. Clamp it on good and tight. Awesome. Next one. Tiny bit of glue. There. Just there. Line that up. Don't know what these clamps are called. C-clamps, maybe? Perhaps? Just going to double check, make sure I don't have glue sticking onto things that I don't want it sticking onto. That should be fine. Clean up any of this drool if you wish. It doesn't really matter. There, and then let it dry. Of course you got to do the next side, but I'm not going to do that on camera because that would be boring. Last but not least, here's my idea for an easy cleanup molding board. As you remember, this Flask, these boards were all 7 inches long. So 7 inches plus 3/4 plus 3/4 means these two pieces are 8.5 inches apart. This is a 1x8 board, which means it's only 7.25 inches wide. I added 2 half-inch boards to the end, half-inch square dowels with screws. Now, that's going to give me 1/4 more clearance. Instead of putting this flat on a bench, which you see I can't do because I left these things sticking out for a reason. If you want to just use a normal board, I mean, cut these flush with the top of this thing, and then there you go. But I left them sticking out because now I can slide them here. I have a little bit of motion that I can move it so that way these won't jam on. But even moving back and forth, this opening is always over this hole. Or this board, I mean. No holes. You don't want a hole. Your sand will fall through the hole. So I'll set it here. Put the mold in or whatever I want on the pattern. Then I got sand. We'll pretend sand's in here. You can, put it in there. Put it on straight out of the bucket. Ram it all up with the stick. And then at the end, I'll clean it off straight back into the bucket. I've seen a lot of people do these on the ground or on a desk, and it seems like sand kind of gets everywhere and it kind of makes a mess. Or they have to do it on a tarp, like on a board that's on a tarp on the floor. And I really don't want to put all my sand in a pile on the floor or keep it in a tarp or any of that. I'll just do it straight with this. So when you scrape it off, it goes right into the bucket. Easy peasy. Then, you pull it out, flip it around. You stick this part on, same kind of deal. Yeah, that's roughly right. Put the stuff in, ram it up, clear it off, right back into the bucket. And then it's off to the casting. So nice and easy. Fortunately, too, when you take this off, there will be some sand left on the board. You just clear that, right back into the bucket. Real easy. And then you can always stick a board on the bottom on each side, like here on the outsides. So it'll hold it in center and everything. It'll be nice and contained, nice and easy, nice and cheap. And a 1x8 is definitely stiff enough that it won't flex under the weight of this little bit of sand. And you might be thinking, now I'd have to build one of these for every flask, and I really don't. I only have to have one of these for different flask lengths. But really, I mean, how many different size flasks are you going to use? I think I'm going to use like 3. And if I end up with one that's really, really weird, I'll just plane these flat, these little pins flat, and do it the normal way. But for most of the stuff, everything I could think of that I wanted to cast was kind of small. So, you know, small flask, small board, fits over the bin, all the sand stays contained. And when I'm done, I just fold these down, stick this board on top, stick the whole thing up on the shelf. And we're good to go until the next time. So there you go. Thanks for watching. I hope you can build your own flasks and get melting your own stuff very soon. This is certainly an interesting project, although it kind of goes underappreciated in all the metal casting videos that I've seen. But they're very, very necessary. So build these, get to melting stuff. Next I'll get into pattern making, which is making the mold, the pattern of the thing that you want to cast in metal, and then I'll cast some metal. So, hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time when maybe we start melting stuff.